once again. So, welcome back to Let's Get Moving podcast. So, let's dive straight into an ideological war that is currently taking over the commercial gyms and all the elite training facilities and all the social media globally, I think. If you have opened your social media platforms recently or over the several months, you have run definitely into this person. You're probably seen as a grindly black and white man with a thick mustache, very heavy glasses, and an insanely serious expression on his face. So he speaks with absolute mathematical conviction, telling you that everything you're currently doing in the gym is a complete and utter waste of time. So I'm talking here about the late Mike Mentzer and a massive posthumous viral reassurance of his philosophy as a heavy duty. So right now, I think we are witnessing a massive generational shift among young lifters and hardcore, maybe fitness enthusiasts. All of the people are completely abandoning the 3 hour marathon workout sessions, that has dominated in the last decade. We also know from the golden era. And they are deleting everything they know, all the spreadsheets, throwing the 30-page set of volume block and, trading it all for this brutal minimalist approach by performing just 1 or 2 sets, pushing to the absolute, soul-crushing mechanical failure of your muscle. And this isn't just an internet trend, I believe. It's a full blown counterculture movement against what many feel is an over-engineered, hyper-optimized science-based fitness space that we used to know. And I would like to strip away today and look at this debate from a very strict and also results-driven coaching perspective. I would like to put this old school with high-intensity legends with this, like modern volume is kings, scientific researchers to just figure out what actually drives this elite human physical performance. So the core conflict here for me, this heavy duty versus the high volume training philosophy is to understand why this debate has become so polarizing is we need to map out these two opposing factors currently fighting for the soul of modern strength training. And the first factor should be definitely, the high intensity pursuits in our training sessions. So this type is purely built on the foundational arguments laid down, by Mentzer and a modern icons like Sam Sulik and I don't know who else, but at this point they're used to it, using it in their training sessions. And the core argument is that muscle growth is essentially a binary biological switch. So you either trigger it with the adaptation or you don't. And if you perform one single set with 100% absolute unmistakable intensity, pushing past the point of mechanical failure, I think you hit the switch. So, and Mentzer argued that any training volume performed after that, growth switch, has practically been flipped, just doesn't make any growth segments anymore. So instead, it's simply consumed by your body systematic recovery resource, so just digging a deeper hole for the central nervous system to climb back up. So you can either train hard or you can train long, but you cannot do it both. So by his principles. And in cell phone clays, they're performing, 10 sets to a true failure. The definition of failure is fundamentally wrong here. But on the other factor, the modern science-based volume training, you have the dominant consequences of the last decade, of exercise science. Also stacked by researchers who look at, that aggregate laboratory data. And the core argument here is definitely we did that total training volume, specifically the number of hard effective sets performing per muscle group during a week. So this is a primary variable that drives that muscle hypertrophy. And we also know it as a time under tension. A single set, no matter how hard you fight through it, simply cannot provide a large enough total mechanical stimulus or sufficient time under tension to maximize muscle tissue adaptation compared to a well-designed, multi-set protocol. So we have this philosophy from Mike Mentzer of one set to a failure. And if you want to put everything aside, all of the drama, and took this discussion in actual, human physiologically, so what takes place, the Mentzer's low volume approach actually builds also impressive physics, and he's the true evidence to it. So we have to look at the work of modern biomechanics research as well, so specifically around the concept of mechanotransduction. And mechanotransduction is simply the biological process by which a muscle cell detects a physical or mechanical stretch and converts that physical force into a chemical signal that accelerates the muscle protein synthesis. And when you execute a set to a true mechanical failure here, so something specific happens to your movement velocity. So as your muscle fibers fatigue with the time, the speed of our repetition definitely going to slow down dramatically. And it's completely independent of your voluntary will. You're pushing, if you're pushing as hard as you can, but the bar is definitely with the time is going to move much more slowly. So according to this size principle training, so when movement velocity slows down under a heavy relative load, so then your central nervous system is forced to recruit high threshold motor units. And these high threshold motor units controlled by so-called type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers. So this is the exact muscle fibers that possesses the greatest capacity for raw strength, and also on the other side, the physical growth. So this is the foundation of the effective reps model. So the first 5 to 6 reps are just as in a standard 10 repetition set, of course, is just essentially preparatory reps. They're just here to create that fatigue necessary to force you later on, to in your body to utilize these high threshold motor units. But the real thing he is I think that true adaptive stimulus. During those final 3 to 5 repetitions, we're actually fighting against involuntary velocity loss. And this is where Mentzer philosophy is validated by modern era society. So if an athlete has the physiological capability to execute a set with absolute intensity, so where the bar stalls completely despite maximal voluntary effort, they have successfully recruited and fully stimulated every available high threshold motor unit in that target muscle group from this standpoint of view. But from a time efficiency standpoint, stopping where protects the athlete from the massive systematic and neurological drain, of course, causes that excessive unnecessary volume. That makes a little bit positive, what the Mentzer says. So why volume still dominates in textbooks nowadays? And if the philosophy of single sets to a failure is so incredibly potent, why does the literature consistently lean towards a multi-set model? So why do the textbook tell us to do 10 or 20 sets per week if this is the optimal range? You ask yourself. So, but there is a few critical reasons for this, and as the athletes as well as the coaches, we have to be honest about them. So what is the ceiling if you do the single set? So the single set to a failure provides a massive spike in muscle protein synthesis signaling. So it represents a strict ceiling for a single training session. And multiple sets spread out over a session or a training week allows you for repeated sustained waves of that hypertrophy signaling pathway that often can lead to a greater net adaptive response over a 24 to 40 hour anabolic period window after that. So the factor is true mesmerizing here for me. So the training requires, an elite level of neurological drive, so motor control and raw physical tolerance here. So the reality is that the vast majority of people who think they are training to fail is actually, gonna stopping 3 or 4 repetitions short because the localized burning sensation becomes highly uncomfortable for them. So only the advanced lifters can do something like this. But if an average lifter attempts that kind of style with one set program, they're usually giving, under the stimulated muscle. It's very insufficient in total work because they lack the ability to truly access those high threshold motor units. So for them, volume acts as a safety net. And if your intensity is only 7 or 8 out of 10, you need more sets to accumulate enough total mechanical tension to spark growth. And it is the same difference between weight training and calisthenics. So you have to hit those numbers. And the Sam Sulek as a modern hybrid athlete is a very phenomenon. So this brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of modern fitness culture, I think. So the rise of so-called vibe training, and the science-based backlash, perfectly exemplified by fitness influencer Sam Sulek. I don't know if you know him. But Sulek has become the face of the movement that completely rejects hyped optimized clinical and overanalyzed exercise, a science-based model. So he doesn't carry a clipboard. He doesn't do anything. He is obsessed with over exact percentage or calculated his weak sets volume down to the decimal point. He walks into the gym, picks a muscle group and trains with a raw instinctive focus on effort consistently and, feeling the pump. And on paper, his training looks like high volume because he performs multiple exercises per session. But if you watch his actual execution, his philosophy is deeply connected to the old school high intensity protocols. So he uses a partial repetitions in the lengthened positions and then the intense drop sets and pushes his body to the absolute physical exhaustion in that point. And this movement is growing rapidly because people are experiencing immense analysis, paralysis thing. So the fitness culture spans years making people feel like if their repetition is not perfect or tempo, and the results, weren't timed for seconds, so their workout was a failure. So the resurrections of Mentzer and his popularity prove that the general fitness community is just looking maybe for the authenticity, simplicity on the other side, and the undeniable truth that maybe the raw um, can give us on every single day. So, but the practicing for any individual athlete here, um, as the coaches are dealing with individual athletes on a daily basis, we do not have the luxury of, being dogmatic here. So we do not care about the intent arguments. We care about measurable physical outcomes, the results. So the high intensity, low volume training is not a religion to anyone. So it is a high precision tool that should be deployed, in a broader macro cycles. But that's just simply my opinion. But here is exactly how you program and integrate this debate into a real world, Um, so you have to incorporate the, tactical time block. So what is the scenario here? You have an athlete entering a high stress period, an immense maybe business travel window, or a deep deficit where systematic recovery is probably highly compromised. So what should be the protocol here? So you cut lean, first and foremost, trading volume by 50 to 60%. You're helping them transitioning to a minimalist, maybe maximum 40. So in this situation, you prescribe exactly one or two thoroughly accumulated warm-up sets, followed by one single absolute working set to mechanical failure exercise. So what is the outcome here? So this protocol allows the athletes to completely maintain their with a neural drive and a lean muscle mass while keeping their workouts minutes and protecting their entire nervous system from that systematic burnout. The next strategy, what I also like to consider, it's the how to bridge that plateau cycling area where the athlete, can be grinding through a traditional high volume program, for example, for months, and their strength has, plateaued at that point, and they're consistently maybe just, looking up and down what should be doing. You should shift probably them into a 4 to 6 or a 6 week period of high intensity training or a hit block. You can then drop the total number of exercises, but the absolute physiological intensity on the remaining movements or exercises they should be performing to ensure they hit those high threshold motor units, to incorporate the advanced intensity modifiers on their single working set, and then just playing with the work to rest ratio. Take a load to absolute meter, then rest, maybe for example 15 seconds just shortly, and immediately execute another 2 or 3 repetitions with the same weight. So this is how you can play a little bit with this. But once you have a fully range of motion of failure that you have reached, you can continue also performing repetitions strictly in the stretch or lengthening position of the movement until the weight can no longer be hold. You can just, stick to it. But if you're going to experiment with low volume but high intensity training blocks, you must follow these rules with discipline. And there is also a difference from a mechanical failure versus the breakdown. So if you're pushing a set to a failure, does not mean, compromising the structural integrity of your technique. So if you have to swing your toes or, teach the weight or just doing some other mechanical acquisitions here to create a repetition, you're no longer forcing the target muscle to fail. And instead of it, you have to remember you're just transferring that mechanical load directly into your joints. And true failure really means the mechanical failure of that group while maintaining a perfect and peak form. And this is 100%. But track your visually and mathematically. So when you're only doing working set, so that set matters immensely. So you must track your weight and repetitions. And if you perform, for example, 200 kilos for 8 repetition, a single mission with a back squat, for example, and you hit 200 kilograms for 9 repetitions or increase, then you can just switch. But if your performance drops, your intensity wasn't paired with a recovery. So you have to localize about this to ensure that anabolic sequences with the progressive overload can be stacked before you hit, for example, the 202, 205 kilograms of squat. Then reduce the number of repetition. And if you want to stick with a specific number of repetition, just be able to do exactly in the whole week until that weight becomes lighter to move beyond the next thing. So if you are then able to do 205 kilograms with the same amount of repetition, or just even one lower than that, then you're perfectly good. So the resurrectness of Mike Mentzer fee. Is it for me just passing you by and giving you strength that we should talk about? But it is for me maybe unnecessary, a course correction here for the. It serves as a very a strong reminder that the volume without the intensity is a complete waste of time. So you can have the most scientifically very good optimized, beautifully designed training program on earth. But if the raw instinctive physiological effort isn't present, when you grab that bar, your result is like behind, I think. So the ultimate here for a high level athletic performance is keeping your overall training volume moderate, managing a lifestyle and the recovery metrics very strictly, and treating every single working set you perform with absolute respect, with focus and raw intensity of heavy set. So just stop chasing the trends, and check out the box on your phone. So make sure that your heart set's truly hard, and respect your body's biology, of course, and let your result out. So this is my message to you on today's Let's Get Moving podcast. And if this episode brought some value to you and to your training mindset, share it with a partner who needs, to stop guessing on their sets and their weight. And, make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a review or a comment, and let's keep moving people all together. I love you all. Until the next meeting. Bye bye.